back to chapter 10, that when this seventh bowl would be poured out, that this would be the end of God's wrath. All right? So, what we're getting to in chapter 17, you got to think of in these terms.
Hey, we did do 16.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, but,
Yep.
okay,
Yep, we did.
sorry.
I'll go back and I'll see if you can remember if I remind you. We did in 16, we talked about the bowl judgments.
Okay.
Remember going through those? You know what? I know what you're saying. We did 16, we did the bowls. I think we stopped on one of the bowls.
Yeah, we did.
We stopped
We stopped.
on bowl number 8. Because we did the waters. No, we stopped on the 4th. That's 8th bowl. Nobody caught that?
I was gonna let you catch it.
Oh, y'all got to catch, man. When I say something, catch me. All right, we'll do these last bowls because they're fairly quick. The 7 bowls are the end of God's judgment and tribulation. All right, so in chapter 16, we get these bowls poured out, and we just get a description of what goes on. The bowls that were already poured out, one was, first of all, the sores, which was the ulcers on the skin. We call them boils, right? That would not heal. And then the sea turned to blood and everything in the sea died. Then the waters turned to blood, so there was no more drinking water. And now we are on verse 8, and we are on the 4th bowl, and then the 4th angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and power was given to him to scorch men with fire, and men were scorched with great heat, and they blasphemed the name of God who has power over these plagues, and they did not repent and give him glory. Now, so we're talking about sunburn, but we're talking about something more severe than sunburn. A lot of speculation on what this could be, what this is. So far as to even say that somehow or another the inner core of the earth stops spinning. What would happen if the inner core of the earth stopped spinning? Let me see if you went to science class.
No night?
No.
No, that's not
When
yet.
am I false?
We'll fall out the sky.
No. Why you? That's because you went to the University of Texas and you should know this. You learned this back in the 4th grade.
Oh, Lord.
I understand. I understand the core. The core is melted molten lava.
Yes.
Inside there's an inner core that is a chunk of iron, a big piece of iron. When you have liquid metal spinning around solid metal, it creates something.
No, the electro.
There you go, the electromagnetic spectrum. So what that does is, that is what keeps the sun's rays from burning us up. If it's, is that what you said?
Well, I said it would blow up.
You said it would blow up. No, the earth wouldn't blow up. It would burn up. The sun would burn us up pretty much like it's doing to other planets, right? Because the atmosphere would not have this electromagnetic field around it to protect it from what comes from the sun. So some people think it's that. That was an interesting little science deal. But if it were that, that would be total destruction. The earth would burn up. This says that they're burning up. So what keeps the sun from burning us up now? I said the electromagnetic spectrum, but there's something else. The ozone. So some damage to the ozone that would allow the sun to increase its heat. It says power was given to the sun. So men would be scorched with great heat. So let's see where we are. Men have sores that have pus coming out of them that won't stop and they can't die. When you mess up the sea, that messes up everything. That's our biggest food source, by the way. And you also mess up the rain. And that makes sense as to why the very next thing that you see is there's no drinking water. There's no drinking water and you're burning up, you're very thirsty. And vegetation is pretty much done with because it needs all of these things. So man is in really bad shape. All of these 7 bowls, this is what happens right at the end. It's one thing right after the other, one thing right after the other. So if the sun now is burning people up, it's interesting what comes next. Because in verse 10 it says, then the fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and his kingdom became full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues because of the pain. You see the Bible talks about weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yes, sir.
That's what that is. That's the gnawing. That's the gnashing of teeth. That, you know, when something hurts you, that's what they're saying. These people are literally going around now in dark, burned up, with sores, can't drink, can't eat, and can't die, and they're it's tearing them up. They blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and did not repent of their deeds. Verse 11, you want to highlight, circle. It should stand out. They blasphemed the God of heaven. What does that tell you that they understand about what's going on?
That it's a God.
That it's God who's doing it. They had the two witnesses running around doing all this stuff. They had the 144 running around saying this is God. They know it's God, but they do not repent of their deeds. Instead, they blaspheme the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores. So then, the sixth bowl is interesting because verse 12 says, then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. Does anybody know what Euphrates is? Mm-hmm.
Kind of, I guess, where the Garden of Eden comes
Where we think the Garden of Eden is. There's two rivers that run together, and there's a city there. It goes through Egypt, but it also goes through another city.
to. Is it border Saudi
Babylon.
Arabia?
Babylon, Syria.
You said Babylon? Yeah, Babylon. That's Syria. Yeah, that whole area where we would say is Israel is also close by. I'm sorry, Israel is close by, but Jerusalem is not too far away. Iraq, all of that. So it's interesting because it says the great river Euphrates and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. So the way of the kings would be the leaders of the east. So who would that be? Well, the 10 nations, I think, may be more European. So the kings of the east, who would that be? When you say east, who's the first thing you think of? Okay, Middle East. But if I say Eastern, China. Start thinking of China, right? So it says here that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. So prepared for something. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. That's interesting too, because frogs do represent unclean spirits symbolically, coming out of each one of the false trinity's mouth. For they are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. So they're preparing them to go out to battle, but look at how they're doing it. They are literally going out and deceiving the world, which is what Satan does. Satan is the beast that's empowering all of this. So the great deceiver is doing his deceiving thing. Verse 15, behold, I come as a thief, blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Who do you think that is that's speaking?
Jesus.
Yes. Behold, I come as a thief. What does that mean? I come as a thief.
You're not gonna see.
Quick, well, did you say quickly?
You're not gonna know.
You're not gonna know. You won't know until it's done. When do you know you've been visited by a thief?
So you know.
There you go. That's what he's saying. Look, I'm coming like a thief. Yeah. I've been telling you I'm gonna come like a thief. In the midst of you preparing your battle, I will come, and before you know it, it's over. It's done with. Blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments. Who would that be? The saved. Those who are giving their lives. Lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Verse 16. And they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Armageddon. Y'all see Armageddon? How many times in your, some of y'all are really young, so see if you've heard this. How many times have you ever heard on the news or anywhere, at any place, at any time, they said this is the Battle of Armageddon? Like right now, what's going on? Hear it all the time. I'm gonna tell you when I heard it, and it really made me perk up and pay attention, because at the time that it happened, it just so happened that I was just really getting into my Bible study. So when they said it, I perked up and I said, that's impossible. It was when we went to war with Iraq the first time. The first time. The first time we went to war with Iraq, there were people in churches screaming, it's Armageddon. Not even close. Armageddon is going to be a worldwide conflict that will be concentrated where the Euphrates is. The conflict, and what you'll notice it said the kings from the east. What that tells you is that at the end of tribulation, this kingdom is going to be divided. Where the Antichrist is coming and taking over the world, by the time you get to the end of the tribulation period, the world is now going to be split apart. So when we get to chapters 17 and 18, they're going to show us why it got split apart and how it gets split apart. So the kingdom will be divided against itself. All right. This is Armageddon. This is what Armageddon is, and this is when it happens. Armageddon happens at the very end of tribulation. And this is when Jesus shows up. And this is when that whole thing with the sickle and the blood up to the bridle of a horse and all of that blood and all that stuff, that's this right here. Verse 17, the last bowl, seventh bowl. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, it is done, it's over. And there was noises and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such a mighty and great earthquake as not occurred since men were on the earth. Now the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of wine of her, of the fierceness of his wrath. Then every island fled away, and the mountains were not found, and great hail from heaven fell upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent. That's heavy. That's like a pound. All right, so you had a big pound of ice fall from the sky and hit you. Men blaspheming God because of the plague of the hail, since the plague was exceedingly great. This pictures the very end of everything. A couple of things, and we'll get into the next chapter. A couple of things about this. Notice it says that the great city was divided into 3 parts. And then it says the cities of the nations fell. What do you think the great city is? Babylon, when you get to Revelation, is not so much a city, even though it says the city Babylon, Babylon is fallen. It is a system. And we're going to see that. What's the great city in the Bible? Jerusalem. Who's not in Jerusalem at this point? Israel has gone away, which they're now Christians. Remember, they fled to the wilderness. What happened at the 3.5 period of the 7 years? The Antichrist went into the temple and declared that he was God. The new rebuilt temple. Where do you think it's going to be? Jerusalem. Right. The city gets split up into 3 parts. That is symbolic of the fact that at the end of tribulation, the Antichrist kingdom will be divided against itself. Armageddon is literally a war that his kingdom is fighting against itself. And then when Jesus comes, he wipes everything out. Yes?
You said that the Jews are now Christian. Is that because they now know?
Yes. At the beginning of at the middle of the tribulation, at the 3.5 year period, when the Antichrist goes into the new rebuilt temple and declares he's the Messiah, the Jews, the veil comes off, they go, no, that's wrong, and they go out to the wilderness and are protected by God. And he goes after them. He's trying to go get them. But in the midst of him trying to go get them, all this calamity breaks loose. Because the thought process should be, well, how come he couldn't get to them? How were they protected? Well, everything started to fall apart. And as you go over those 3.5 years, what's going on is it's getting worse and worse and worse, really, really fast, really, really bad, really, really quick. And you get down to the end. By the time they get to the end, the only ones that he's been able to really go after and get have been what we would say are Gentile Christians all over the world. But and you got to understand, the millennial kingdom is really a Jewish kingdom. So the Israelites go off into the wilderness. So,
But you
it's,
call them Christians just because now they believe in Christ?
yes,
Oh,
yeah, that's why.
okay.
So, then this part about every island fled away and the mountains were not found. When you read Old Testament prophecy, it literally says that what's going to happen for the millennial kingdom, what's going to take place is the topography of the earth will change completely. Jesus will put his feet down and the earth is going to split where his feet land on the ground. Everything that is will be gone. All right? It's not, no more continent. It's continents. Whatever's left is going to be completely different than what it is now. This is the great shaking that the earth is going through. Some believe, and I don't know. I don't want to speculate. I just say some believe. I don't know. But some believe that what actually happens is the continents come back together like they were in the beginning, because the belief is that in the beginning, that perhaps when the Garden of Eden was the Garden of Eden, it was in the middle of a big continent, and then everything split. It's just a thought. I don't know. Could be, may not be. Who knows? Don't know.
Maybe after the flood.
Yeah, maybe after the flood. If the flood was caused by something hitting the earth, which is what scientists are now looking at now, they say that the fault lines in the earth look like somebody took the earth and twisted it. And literally they said if somebody grabbed it and twisted it, and they said something could have hit the earth and that would have caused a great flood and ice age all at the same time. So
God hit him with his
science backs up a lot of what the Bible says. All right, so what you get then is this is the end. Literally, you got to go from chapter 16 to chapter 19 to pick up chronologically what happens next. But he put in chapters 17 and 18. So today, we're going to be here in chapter 17, and this is what is going on. It's like God is saying to John, okay, I'm showing you all these things that'll happen, and the more I show you, I give you a big overview, then I give you a little bit more of it. But as we get here to the end, I want to show you in the end of it, real fast, hard, and that's the last bowl. But then he says, I want to show you the reality and the reasoning and what was going on all this time that drove us to this point. Chapter 17 is about false religion and how false religion has been there since way back in the Babel days is where false religion begins. And so he's going to show us in chapter 17, false religion has been an influence on the world going all the way back to the Tower of Babel. In chapter 18, he's going to show us how politics and business and politics and commerce, how they contributed to the downfall of man. So think about this. These are the three things that we typically spend our lives around: religion, politics, and money.
Yep.
And he's going to show us those three things were so corrupt. That is why this judgment comes upon man. Yes?
I have a question. So, when you talked about some Wednesdays ago, apostasy, what do you think that that's going to look like? So the churches, it will only be like a few people in church, or people just stop going to church completely?
Are you talking about during tribulation period?
Yes.
No, there's going to be one religion.
So
And it's going to be a false one.
But I thought apostasy was people falling away from.
It is. You have apostasy now in church.
Okay.
Apostasy is when you fall away from the faith, but not that you fall away and stop coming. It means falling away from the faith in the sense of now you start to equate things that are evil and bad and wrong and so forth. So it is the prosperity gospel is apostasy.
So you're saying falling away from doctrine? That's
Yes.
What okay.
Yeah.
So it's not really.
It's turning. We think of Christianity. Apostasy is taking what is biblically correct and making it into something that is biblically wrong. That makes you an apostate, yes.
But you were never saved to begin with, if that happens, is that?
Yes, that is the point of it all, is the reason that happens is because people come into the church that are not saved, and then they twist the Bible to make it say whatever they would like it to say, and so forth and so on. And what you'll see is, it's actually a pattern that you have in every religion. Apostasy usually matches up with some other religion. Most of them, if not almost every single one of them, also ties itself into business and politics. That's where the apostasy springs up. When you intertwine those, you end up with corruption. Yes?
So like, I had told Tamara and Shawaki, my mom visited a church this past week, just a new church that's near our town. And the whole service was, she was like, they had a thing, all they talked about is sow a seed. It was $1,000, I want 7 people to give me $1,000, and God would bless those 7 people. And when those 7 people had come up, they asked for 3 more, and that was the whole service. And it was angry. That's apostasy.
That's apostasy.
People were coming up.
That's
People were
apostasy.
coming up, and she was mad because she was like, usually you can't get people to even give tithe. And I was like, but that's because they want to believe God is a genie, that you can just pay to do stuff.
That's apostasy. And like I said, most of the time when you see apostasy, the roots of it are money. The roots, and when you look at it, why twist the Bible? And what does the Bible tell us? You twist it for gain. Yes. For evil gain. Yes.
The Bible also said the very elect, so are they the elect are saved?
That, well, the Bible talks about the very elect being
Deceived.
deceived by the coming Antichrist. And so in the latter part of the days, the very elect might even be saved. But during the tribulation period, the elect are gone. Does it ever happen? Yes. Even the very elect. But the rapture takes place before tribulation. So then, yeah. So that will go. Are there some elect now that are? Yes. So when, but your answer, here's the thing with apostasy. Apostasy, literally, when you go to the book of Hebrews, the way it's described, it is you got a taste of it, you're close to it, you're very near to it. It's like saying you came into the church, you loved what you heard, you like the people, you like the worship, you start thinking you're it, but you're not there, and then you will typically fall for anything. And the writer of Hebrews even describes it. He says, what you typically are doing in this area is, he says, you would have Christ come back and be crucified every time you messed up. Right? So it's the person, a lot of apostasy is people believing they're saved when they're not. Because that's apostasy. Think about it. Just think about it for a second. I'm saved, but I'm not really. I never repented. I never saw myself wrong. But I'm in church. How many people go to church and they give, they serve, and they're very nice and kind and maybe teach and preach and do all that kind of stuff, but they don't have a relationship with Christ at all. They don't. They are literally in there going off of merit. See, apostasy doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing, quote, bad things. Apostasy says you have a false sense of faith. You
On
are.
purpose?
Huh?
So does it mean that they purposely want to do that, or some just being deceived?
Self-deception.
Okay, that didn't. Say yes or no to one of them. What is that?
You say, well, for it to be on purpose, you have to know what was right.
Okay.
All right. If you don't know what's right, then you're being deceived. That's self-deception. For a Christian, for the elect to be deceived, how could the elect be deceived?
If you listen to a pastor that's deceiving people, but you never studied on your own.
Okay, so how many of y'all have ever heard a pastor say something that was just biblically off? How did you know?
Because it didn't.
Stop. Because it didn't line up with the what?
The word.
The word. So you read the word?
You have to.
Okay, so if you are saved and refuse to study the Bible, could you be deceived?
Yes.
You could. What would the Holy Spirit do in that instance?
That's what you.
Mess with you, yes. You wouldn't be able to sit there. The Holy Spirit would mess with you on that, but the Holy Spirit's going to bring back to remembrance. So if you're saved and you refuse to open the Bible, then yes, people can tell you anything. People can tell you anything, right? And I mean, I've told y'all on several occasions, don't believe me just because I said it. Go back and read it for yourself, because you can't stand before Christ and say, well, he said, well, this right here, and you be like, well, Pastor Harris said that. He's gonna be like, I gave you a Bible. I'll deal with him, but you can't blame him for your lack of reading. All right, so take it serious. Take it like you would a contract. How many of y'all read your contracts before you sign it? I know my wife will read every word in the contract before she signs it. I know it irritates people too, because she'll be like, what's this? And then, when you like, it's nothing. Yes. Right? But that's the way you should be with the Word of God. Don't sign the contract I'm handing you. Read it for yourself. Disagree with me, fine. I'm not going to get mad. You won't hurt my feelings. I promise you. So, chapter 17, we'll get into the whole issue of false religion. So, as we go into chapter 17, God is basically saying, okay, I would jump you to 19, but I do want to take you and show you around a little bit about what's really transpiring here. Because think about how many people have read parts of the Bible and come away and say, God just mean. Yeah, he just mean. He just mean. And then you come here, chapter 17 and 18 of Revelation will show you God isn't mean, man is corrupt. That's the problem. So chapter 17 is false religion. So, chapter 17 is also interesting because we will get in the first 5 verses this description, and then the latter part of the chapter will explain what we're seeing here. So it says in chapter 17, verse 1, then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters. All right, so one of the angels that had the bowls, we don't know which one, could have been the last one, could have been the first one, we don't know, comes and tells John, all right, come, notice these words, I will show you. What this literally means is I'm going to show you, again, John, in this vision, I'm going to give you a vision of something extremely important. He says, I will show you the judgment, notice the judgment, of the great harlot who sits on many waters. Now, we'll find out later on that the harlot is false religion, all right? The waters are people and nations, which is an indication that false religion has been sitting up on people and nations for a long time, all right? And the inhabitants of the earth were made to drink the wine of her fornication. So we got the Greek word porneia here twice. It's where we get the word pornography from. This word fornication means to be just plain filth. So it says in verse 2, with whom the kings, I skipped that. With whom the kings of the earth committed fornication. So y'all see kings of the earth. Who do you think that represents? Leaders. All right. And the inhabitants. Who are the inhabitants? Everybody else, the ones being led. So from the leaders all the way down to those being led, were all made to drink with the wine of her fornication. And I said we're going to identify her as a false religion. False religion has been the influence in the world for a very long time. It is right here that I can understand, or I'll put it this way. The atheists are so close to understanding something, yet so far away from the truth. An atheist will tell you in a second that religion is designed to control people. The truth of the matter is, false religion has been used throughout history to control people. In fact, where Christianity has been taken into an apostate way, it is almost in every way and in every time used to control people. It is used to get something from people. when you look back at the Crusades at that time, in that era, if you look at what was going on, nations were using Christianity for their own gain. They used Christianity to go out and attack other nations. They put it under the banner of Christ, we'll go attack this nation. That's apostasy, and that's using Christianity in a false way. See, just because something says it's something doesn't make it something. Y'all understand what I mean by that? There's been many people say, I'm Christian, and there's nothing about that is Christian, right? So that's happened forever and a day. And so atheists, when they say that religion is used to control people, they're absolutely right. The problem is they get flipped out on Christianity altogether, because the realization of Christianity is not like religions. Because religions ascribe you to certain things that you have to do in order to be in and remain in the religion. And Christianity comes along with this thing of grace and tells you there's only one God and one way, and that's what they don't like. They don't like the others because they can see it right off the bat. That's used to control people. They look at Christianity, and when they look at the essence of Christianity, it's not a control thing. Christians are free. That's why if you read any atheist literature on other religions, what you will find is they talk this much about everything else, except for Muslims. They get a little deeper. But when it comes to Christians, it's volumes. It's volumes. So he says that everybody, no matter who you are, has been under this influence. And then verse 3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. That term, carried me away in the spirit, means he took me to another spiritual location to get another vision. I've seen this woman, I will show you the harlot who sits on many waters, but I'm going to see something else. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. This is not the same wilderness that Israel is in, all right? This is actually from Isaiah 21. Isaiah 21 talks about the fact that Babylon will fall, and that the place that she will fall, she will go into this desert with a south wind, and gives a description that fits what's going on here. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Hold your thoughts on the 7 heads and 10 horns. The angels are going to talk about that, and we'll get through that. But notice that what it says here, it says, I saw the woman sitting on a scarlet beast. So she's sitting on the beast. Anybody ever sat on a beast?
Yeah, someone that rides a horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, now, when we had our couples retreat,
Let's keep going.
what is the left?
Let's just keep going.
We had our couples retreat, and some of us went horseback riding. Now, I got on a horse. I've been on a horse before. I actually had a horse when I was a kid. When you ride a horse, you control the horse. However, that beast is stronger than you, bigger than you, and one of us found out if it decides to go where it wants to go, oh well, it will. It will go. Just hold on. So this means that the fact that she's riding this beast means that she is influencing. That's what it means to ride. She's influenced. She's not in total control, but she is influencing. All right? So it's and by the way, she is a what? What is she?
A harlot.
A harlot. What's a harlot? Okay, so what does that tell you about her methodology?
Cunning,
Cunning, it's very seductive, she knows how to attract and seduce. So she's good at this. All right. So that's why he calls false religion the harlot, because that's what she is. By the way, it's interesting because when you look at the saints, they're all arrayed in white. It's plain. We're gonna see her. She's gonna be sparkling, decked out. So she's got influence over the beast. Then verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. Interesting use of colors. Well, actually, what's interesting is, what color was Jesus' robe? No, at the cross. What the robe they put on him? Well, here's what's interesting. In Mark's gospel and John's gospel, it was purple. In Matthew, he says scarlet. The reality of it is, if you go back to that time and look at their colors, purple and scarlet were extremely close. Very close, and you could mix them up. It is the color of royalty. That's why they threw it on him. But what's interesting is that the Gospels say, one says, two say purple, one says scarlet, and then here she is wearing purple and scarlet. It is a royalty. It is also a sign of affluence and all of that. But a lot of scholars believe that this is a play, because this is false religion, on what happened with Jesus. Almost like a mocking of Christ altogether. And then it says, and adorned. If I were translating this word adorned, I would say decked. That's what it means. She was decked out with gold and precious stones and pearls. So when you think about somebody being decked out, she got a lot of it. So she is in this beautiful purple, scarlet, and all of these things, and then she's got all of this gold. What are all of these things used for if she's a harlot? To attract. Attraction. Stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Now here's the interesting thing. When you think of that golden cup, think of a chalice. What is a chalice usually an indication of?
Royalty, king, pretty much.
Yeah, royalty. Because now we see people walking around in chalices. If you're in the hip hop cultures, yeah, okay. Yeah, you see, but it's meant a chalice is something that royalty has to be able to drink from a golden cup. So imagine the kind of influence that she has. Her influence is so strong. She looks good, she's decked out, she's seductive, and then she got a cup she's sipping from, and it's a gold chalice. And you don't just put anything in a gold. You don't put Hawaiian punch in there. Right? You got to put expensive something. You know, whatever's in there, I mean, you drinking out of gold, it's got to be great. Look at what it is. Full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. So what she's basically doing is sucking everybody in and saying, get drunk on this right here. You ain't had a drink like you had this. Come up in here. And this is false religion, yes.
Wasn't there a character like in the Ebenezer Scrooge story? What was it? They were like the ghost of something. It was like a king or something with all the robes and jewels, and he had a chalice or something. They were using him to show like opulence and over the topness, that type thing. Is that what they're trying to?
Could be. I don't know if they got it from that, but that would.
Yeah,
make
I just
sense.
remember a character in a story like that, and they were using that character to show like opulence, and that's what I was wondering. If
Yeah, and
they're trying to show
that's what it is. It
the over
is.
the top.
Yes. What's funny about that thing now? Okay, so I want everybody to think about this for a second. When you think about all of the religions in the world, you know, the ones that just kind of start popping and sticking out to you, do you not notice an over-the-top kind of show of opulence in their leadership?
Christians and Roman Catholics.
Yeah.
Well,
Right, Roman Catholics. What about, I mean, I'm just, in a lot of religions, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of it is, there are some out there where they will, like, quote, take these vows of, you know, things, they never get anywhere. The ones that grow, the ones that are popular, are the ones where what is shown to you is earthly gains, earthly things. So it's what you can see. Why put on all the robes? Why put on all of this stuff? Why is it that the holy person has to have all of these things that you see in order to follow them? Because these are earthly things. And then you read John, here's John in Revelation looking at all of this. This is the same John that wrote in 1 John, love not the things of the world. People fall in love with religions because of what they see. A lot of it has to do with what they see.
That's why they
Even-
cater to those people
Huh?
that's why they cater to those people that are hurting. Like, and come to church, we can heal you and all of that.
Well, and see, y'all are thinking you're thinking in terms of Christianity, but I'm thinking in terms of, what about Nation of Islam?
They just want
What
to
do you
be-
notice about Nation of Islam? How do you know you could, yeah, you've seen one.
Suit, they got
Suit.
yeah.
They're going to have on a suit, they're going to be
400
impeccably
degrees.
dressed,
Yes.
they are going to be upright, they are going to be stout, they are going to be, it's going to be everything we would think from a worldly perspective. This is what righteousness looks like. That's what you've got that aspect of it. They are, now they're out there selling bean pies and papers, but that's what they look like. And it's and there's the whole belief, even in the nation, is that like if you're Farrakhan, you gotta look $1 million. You got to have it. You got to have the bling. You got to have all of it. Why? Because that people will be attracted to you. Think of Scientology.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking of.
Scientology, if you look at their leadership, who are their leaders?
Celebrities.
Celebrities.
folks.
The people
Celebrities.
give them money.
Beautiful people with beautiful money rise up to the top. And you got to ask yourself a question. Why do these actors and stuff keep going there? Because they are coming into a religion that says, oh, because you look good and because you have a lot of money, you don't just come in here as any old body. You come in here and you get to go straight up here to the top.
Some of them go for their past their careers.
Yes, because I get involved, I can get in there and get with them, and yeah, and again, they're attracting people with worldliness. Worldliness. It's all about worldliness. And so when you see this description of the woman, if you want to see it from a practical perspective in false religion, that's what you're looking at. False religions look attractive. Christianity in its purity wouldn't attract a lot of people. It takes an act of God to overcome your own spirit and draw you to him. Why do you think Jesus says to us, the Father draws you to him? Because if you think about it, you got all of these religions over here, and then you come over here and you go, what is pure Christianity? Living in humility and obedience to God, living under grace, being content. And you know what you got? Somebody going, huh? You want me to go for that? As opposed to go over here where they're telling me, I can have this, that, and the other, and whatever the case may be, and when, oh, by the way, and when do I get my reward? I hear Jesus telling the disciples had that, if you've been in Mark's gospel with us on Sunday morning, the disciples had that very same discussion right after the rich young ruler walked away. Okay, look, hold on, Jesus, we left everything. That's what Peter said. And Jesus says, look, nobody ain't left nothing that you didn't get 100-fold right now. Understanding that as we come into the family of faith, my house is your house, and we're all of this is what he was talking about. But then he basically said, and that's nothing compared to what you will get. That hereafter reward is not attractive. What's attractive is here now. That's what's the funny, I just give me mine now, here and now. I'm fine with it. When I'm dead, I'm just dead. That's the way some people think. So what's attractive?
Me.
Life after death? No, that ain't attractive. What's attractive is life now. Because people will be the first day, I don't know what really gonna happen after death. They don't believe in life after death, so these false religions are very, very attractive to them. And then it says in verse 5, and a name was written, and you'll notice the name that was written on her forehead. All right, the word mystery should not be capitalized. Okay, it isn't in yours. In most versions, mystery is. It shouldn't be capitalized. When you read this, that's not her name. Mystery in the Bible is something that hasn't been revealed. Now, this is what I like about mystery in the Bible. If it's a mystery in the Bible, you cannot figure it out. It has to be revealed by God, because the only way to understand a mystery is by revelation. That's why when you get into the New Testament, we say the New Testament, Old Testament mystery, New Testament revelation. And what was in the Old Testament that was hidden, the New Testament opens up for us. So mystery, what's saying here is what was not known. The mystery is, how in the world is this woman tied to what's going on? Here it is in her name, Babylon the Great. All right, so Babylon. Most people, when you think of Babylon, what do you think of? You think of Nebuchadnezzar and all of that. I want to take you back, because I want to show you where false religion began. It's a Babel.
Oh, the tower.
Tower. Go to Genesis chapter 11, and when you see where false religion actually began, and here's what's really interesting about Genesis chapter 11. If you study Mesopotamian history, the oldest writings in Mesopotamia is called the cradle of civilization. A lot of counting and a lot of things come out of Mesopotamia. What's interesting is there is a story in Mesopotamian history that says that while building the zygotes, or ziggurats, that's what they're called, ziggurats. I say zygotes, it's ziggurats. Ziggurats are towers. Towers that were built in Mesopotamia. While building the towers, in the midst of building the towers, one night they said, this is what Mesopotamian says. Mesopotamian says, the gods were offended. And they came down at night. And on the next day, languages were strange. That's Mesopotamian writing. In fact, the Mesopotamian the writing even talks about there being one king. And this one king had begun all of these towers. To this day, they still find these towers. They've unearthed them. They found them. But when they found them, it was very interesting. And I'll tell you what they actually were. Because even in the Mesopotamian writing, it was the exact same thing. They said that they burned bricks. They made mortar. And the thing is, at that time period, that's when they first started making bricks. They started making bricks to make these towers, because stones wouldn't stand up. They had to shape these things somehow. So they burned bricks, put them into the shapes they needed to make these towers. And it talks about the fact that these towers were going to be a connection between earth and heaven. But the connection is not physical. It's something else. All right, so everybody's heard the Tower of Babel, but let's just go through it real quick, because something in her name springs from this. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. By the way, Mesopotamia says it's Shinar, which is the same place. And they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had an asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Most people, for some reason, I know growing up, and I even heard preachers say it, was like they thought they could build a tower all the way into the heaven with God. No. And if you read it, even in English, it's not what it's saying. It says, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the where? Heavens. When people refer to heavens, what are they usually referring to? Sky. Well, yeah, we got 3 heavens, but yeah. But usually if I say, look at the heavens, what do? You look up. It was to get up high. When I relate to you what they found when they found these zygotes, you know why they did it. Let us make a name for ourselves. Y'all see that? We're going to build a tower, get it up in the heavens, and then we're going to make a name for ourselves. Is this rebellion against God? Most definitely. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. The issue with that is, and what most people miss is, what did God tell Noah and his sons?
Get out.
To go all over.
Get out, scatter out, and do what? Multiply. Go all over the earth. Look at what's happening here. Let's build a city. Let's stay in the city. Let's build a tower. Let's all make a name for ourselves, and lest we be scattered. In other words, let's not do what God said. Verse 5, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the Son of Man had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they began to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Ooh. If they're going to stick together like this, then they're going to go totally against me. And whatever they want to do, they're going to try to do. Verse 7, come, let us go. Do y'all see us? Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. This would cause them to not be able to what? Build, because they wouldn't understand what was going on. And literally, the Mesopotamian message says, the gods got angry, came down and confused speech, so the next day, they could no longer build, and the people scattered off according to speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Now, if they were going against God, were they now going towards some other God? Here's the interesting part. When they went and when they started unearthing the zygotes, what they found was that when you got up to the top, so this is what they were doing. Some of them are very wide bases, and they go like this. Some of them were built straight up. But what they noticed with all of them is that at a certain point where they got up to where they were higher than the other buildings in the city, they started to see markings going up. So you're going up the steps and you're seeing markings. And then what they noticed is the markings were the constellations. Over and over and over and over and over. So what they were doing was they were getting off the ground, because if you build a city, what do you have to have at night? Light. To get above the light from the city below, they could see the stars above, and they began to map them. And as they mapped the stars, they began to name them, because they saw constellations, and they said, that right there is a bull. That over there is a fish. And they started naming them things that were created, and then they started giving them stories and authority over their lives. What do we call it? Astrology. Think about Paul, what he writes in the book of Romans. He says, man became wise, thinking he was wise, and became a fool, and began to worship what? The creation more than the creator. So what they did was, that is the first false religion. Astrology. Now, come back to Revelation and look at what this name says, which is quite interesting. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. What is she? She's a prostitute. She's the harlot. If you got kids, you didn't have puppies.
Say what?
You didn't have puppies. The harlot that we're looking at in Revelation is the mother of all harlots. She's false religion that spun off all of these false religions. You go back to Babel, it started with astrology. It started then, but if you think about it, you had multiple gods in the sky. Then they began to associate those multiple gods. If that God was in the sky, that God is in charge. It's the way they did it. And if you were born under a certain God, when your God was in charge, then that was your season. So you lived your life according to your season, according to what was up in the sky. And then as astrology got more and more sophisticated, then they started talking, they caught planets, and the next thing you know, if Mercury is rising, and all of this old crazy, just crazy stuff. And what actually began, if you think about if she's the mother, what she did was she told mankind, look around and find your gods. And find yourself in them. Every false religion is spun off of this. And what it is a go against what God says, go find your own God, and you make that God what you want it to be. Whether it's a human being, doesn't matter. You make that God what you want it to be. See, if I design God, who is God going to benefit?
Me.
But that doesn't work. That makes no sense.
But isn't it attractive?
but it doesn't work. It's a whole bunch of stuff that's attractive, but when it doesn't work, you move on to something else.
Well, you can make another religion. Because you know what you don't want? You don't want the God who is. Because the God who is governor. If I design God, I can limit God. And in fact, if I'm in charge, who's actually God?
Me?
Think about all of the religions where people were sacrificed. Who didn't get sacrificed? The leader. Isn't that funny? The leader couldn't get sacrificed. The leader's family couldn't be sacrificed. Unless somebody in the family made the leader mad, then all of a sudden the God required that sacrifice. Interesting what happens when you can make your own religion. So the mother of harlots, then what we're looking at is the actual, this is false religion, period. This is what it looks like. The mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. That's who this is. This is false religion. So when you get to verse 6, it says, I saw the woman, and what is the woman? She's drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So we've determined that almost all of them are probably going to be Gentiles. She's drunk off of the blood. So here's where she's drunk off of the blood.
Well, who's going to be Gentiles?
The ones getting martyred.
Oh.
All right, so she's drunk off the blood. Here's the thing. The church gets raptured away. But there's a church at the beginning of tribulation still there. There are 3 that we find out. There's the beast, there's the dragon, then there's the beast that came up from the water, and then there's the beast that is on the sand, on the earth. The dragon is the devil. The beast that came up from the water, that is the Antichrist. But who was the false prophet? The false prophet is going to lead us into a one-world religion. What do you think that religion will be?
Worshiping the Antichrist, right?
It's going to be to worship the Antichrist, but here's the thing. It's not Buddhism.
I read somewhere that they think the Antichrist is going to be the Pope.
The false prophet?
I mean, the false prophet.
Yeah,
The Pope.
I've read that and I know why they're saying it. Because if the Antichrist is going to walk into the temple and tell the Jewish people, who will be the only people in the world that have been given the freedom to worship and go back to their Judaism, what is Judaism looking for? The Messiah. If the Antichrist is going to walk in and say, I'm the Messiah, what was going on the first 3.5 years? What was the world religion?
Catholic?
No.
Judy?
It's false, but what is it a false religion of?
Christianity.
Christianity.
Oh.
The one world religion will be Christianity. But it's going to be a false religion that is going to be set up so that when he's looking at it, he's like, all right, I have created this peaceful world. I've created all of these things. I am now the Messiah. We walk in here, Jews, I'm the Messiah. What do the Jews do? No, the veil is off. You're not. This is what Jesus said. Jesus is real because he said, when you see the abomination, who did he tell that to? He told that to his disciples. He told that to the Jews. When you see the abomination of desolation, and when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement because she's drunk on the blood. That's what I'm amazed by. Verse 7. But the angel said to me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman. Oh, mystery of Babylon? Here's the mystery of the woman. And of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. Hang on. The angel's going to explain, and then we'll get into that. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. All right, so verse 8. The beast that you saw was, past tense, and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to the perdition. Back in chapter 13, I think it was. Back in chapter 13, when we talked about the Antichrist, y'all remember the Antichrist having this woman?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And they thought he was dead?
Yes.
He was.
And rose again and
and he
Which is why
rose
they
again.
was Jesus.
That's what this is referring to. So this is pointing to a point probably right at the 3.5 year period when the Antichrist, when they thought he was dead, comes back to life and the whole world marvels. Then he's going to walk into the temple. He's not walking into the temple and saying he's the Messiah until after they think he's risen from the dead. Messiah. He's mapping out everything that Jesus did, copying it. I'm the Messiah. I just rose from the dead. So that's what that means. And those who dwell on the earth and whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is, but you see that? They will go crazy for him. He is the Antichrist. So that description in verse 8 is of the Antichrist. And it kind of tells you that if they have, think about it, if they have been under this false Christianity, led by this false prophet, I'm not going to call him a pope, I have in the past. But I was like, I'm not going to anger Catholics. So whoever he is, I don't care. You know, he's Jimmy Swaggart. I don't know. So whoever he is, he's going to be leading them towards worshiping the Antichrist. But the way that I view this is he's leading them in this world religion of Christianity, so it'll have all of the trappings of Christianity, but it's going to be a false religion. Now, that means it's going to be the harlot riding the beast that is influencing the false religion. So to influence this Christianity, if you look at the harlot, this Christianity is going to be tied into money. By the way, when you look at the seventh church of Revelation, what was the problem? Seventh church.
Lukewarm?
Lukewarm church. What was the problem? You think you are
Rich.
but you are not. This false religion will be so tied into money, it's going to be crazy. How are you going to get, for instance, how are you going to get those people that are in Scientology to go come this way? It's got to be money. They're going to buy into the money. So he's running a money scheme, all right? Verse 9 says, here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now, the woman here now, it says she sits on the 7 heads. Do y'all remember what the 7 heads are? Kingdoms. Kingdoms. The 7 great kingdoms. We've had 6. The last great kingdom was Rome. The 7th kingdom will be the revised Roman Empire. False religion has set on each one of those kingdoms. So for those of y'all that went back to Babylon, what do you know about Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar? He thought he was who?
God.
Egypt.
God.
Assyria. God. Greece. Alexander the Great. God. Rome. Caesar. God. All of them had her riding on them. The influence of false religion. And here's the thing, it allows the satanic influence to continue. Because even though the Roman Empire is defunct, so to speak, that influence still has us today. Right? Our calendar is Roman. I mean, we're still under that Roman influence today. So Satan's influence in this false religion, that satanic influence, has always been there. It's been there through these 7 world powers. That's why she sits on them. And then it says, there are also 7 kings. There are also 7 kings. That's those 7. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is yet to come. So at the point in time that he's doing this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but don't get too tricked by it. He's simply saying the one that is and the one that is to come. The one that is coming is this Roman Empire that is coming. The one that is the Roman Empire for us that has fallen but still has influence. And he says, and notice when he says 1 is, he's talking to John. 1 is. What is the number 1 power in the world as far as John knows? It is there. Rome. Rome. It's Rome. Who were they looking for the Messiah to get them away from? Rome. Right? And the others yet to come. Okay, that's revised. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. So when the 7th one comes, he's going to continue a short time. How long do you think it'll be? 7 years, 3.5 years apiece. Verse 11. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7th. So the 7th empire, watch this. You're going to see the 7th empire in a second. The 7th empire is going to be those 10 nations. The Antichrist is going to rise up with those 10 nations, and then he's going to poke his little self up there and run everything. But it's the 10 nations that are the 7th empire, and he himself being the 8th, he's going to run that, but he is and is of the 7th. Do y'all get that now? He's the 8th, but he is going to be of the 7th. The 10, you're going to see that in a second. Let me just stop, because and is going to perdition. What is perdition? Yeah. Okay. So we know where he's going. Verse 12. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings. Here's your 7. Who have received no kingdom as yet. He's talking to John. So he's going, this is prophecy. But they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. 1 hour just literally means a short time. They will receive power for 1 hour as kings with the beast. So remember the horses. Remember the first horse. Riding on the white horse has a bow, but has no arrows. How does he politically do this? You got 10 nations that rally together to form this revised Roman Empire. You got 10 leaders that have come together and formed some kind of consortium. And you look at it and you say, man, if 5 go against 5, they're in trouble. He comes up politically and takes over. So the 10 give him the power. They rule with him, but he's the leader. This is how he rises to power politically without any war. Doesn't have to go to war. And when those 10 nations come together, they convince the rest of the world to follow them and him. Yes?
Do you think the guy that wrote what's the book?
Left Behind?
Yeah, do you think that's possible, that scenario where they have to create some type of reason why everybody lays down everything and agrees?
Pretty much. Yeah, Tim LaHaye, yeah. I
That's
actually,
plausible.
in order for the Antichrist to rise up in a political way, there cannot be a United States, or at least not a United States with the kind of political influence we have. It has to go away. Because right now, we're the Messiah for the world. Everybody in the world, when something happens, the very first thing they say is, what are the Americans doing? We got our enemies, but our enemies come together with, we got to stop the Americans. But if you think about most of the countries in the world, when they get in trouble, they pick the phone up, they call DC. Now they're stopping. They're not calling anymore. That's why, people are like, I don't know why God would have Trump. Well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. We have to lose some influence. We have to. The world has to be sitting there going, who do we turn to? We can't trust them. If we can't trust them, they don't have their stuff together, we're in a world of trouble. That's what they're saying in Europe right now, by the way. In Europe right now, they're saying, we got to come together ourselves. That's what the German chancellor said about, it was last year. She said, we've got to come together ourselves because we can't depend on America anymore. Think about it. Yes? Question?
Where is it that it says that he comes out of Europe?
There's nothing that says he comes out of Europe, nothing at all. We don't know where he comes from. I think that he's probably going to come out of the Middle East, but Europe will embrace him. That's just my thought. I don't know. I don't know who he'll be or what he'll be, or it's just not known. But anyone that can broker peace,
Probably like a Muslim pope.
I don't know.
He look like an Arab pope.
Well, aren't they the richest in that region?
Could be. Could come straight out of Europe. I don't know. Could come right out of the Middle East. Could come from, I don't know, Fiji. I don't know. I mean, I suspect he'll be Middle Eastern. I suspect, but I actually could be completely wrong. Middle Eastern born, raised European? I don't know. Could be Roman. Could be Italian. Don't know.
Why was John marveling at the
He was marveling at the woman the whole scene.
Oh, this was a.
Yeah, she's just sitting there. She said, think about it. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints. That right there, with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. She was drunk. The false religion led to their destruction. Right? And when I saw her, I marveled. Why did the false religion lead to their destruction? Because worship him. Worship him. Take the mark of the beast. No, I'm not taking the mark of the beast. This is in the first 3.5 years. But we all believe this way. And he says, kill y'all. But now, he has not said, I am the Messiah yet. Not until he's wounded. Somebody tries to kill him. Maybe that's why the Christians are in the woods trying to figure out how they're going to kill the Antichrist when he comes. I don't know. I mean, somebody's going to try to kill him. So let's see. So, and when he comes, he must continue a short time. Yes? Okay. The beast that was and is not is himself the 8th and 7th. I'm sorry, I'm down here. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast, verse 13. Verse 14, these will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. For he is Lord of lords, King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. Now, this overcoming, this is Armageddon, and this is when Jesus comes back with the sickle. I come like a thief. While they're so busy trying to fight each other, Jesus is going to come, and when it's all over, they're going to be like, what happened? He came quickly. Verse 15, then he said to me, the waters which you saw were the harlot, is where the harlot sits. The harlot now is sitting on the water, are peoples, multitude, nations, and tongues. That means that she has had an influence over people for eons, forever. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot. Here's the trick. Who are the 10 horns? The 10 nations. Who's going to come up and lead them? The Antichrist. Watch what the Antichrist does here. These will hate the harlot. Remember, the 10 will be in leadership with him, but he's going to be the ultimate leader. So they will make her desolate and naked. To make someone desolate and naked. Desolate here means to rip apart, tear apart, and take what it has. To make naked means to expose it. So what this is saying is he's going to go in and say, I'm the Messiah. Then, everything's going to start to go kaput, boom, Israel's running out. And then he's going to turn around and he's going to say, oh, the harlot, the false religion. Let me show you that I'm God. Let me pull back what you've been worshiping. Look at the corruption. It's always been there. You've been falling for all of this falseness. I'm your God.
So
that religion, yeah.
Be false, mad at the false.
Not necessarily mad. He's going to use that to get the world to understand, because people will be worshiping, and they'll be all into the quote church of whatever it is, and then he's going to say he's God, and it's like, oh really? He's like, yeah, let me show you. Boom. This is what you've been doing. All this corruption. All of this, and then I think about the opulence you were talking about. Remember how she looks? She's decked out in gold. She's got all of these things. You've been messing with a harlot, a prostitute. I'm your God. I will desolate that, because now your worship will be totally devoted to who? Me, without the trappings of a church in between. You worship me.
That happens so much within the church really now. It's like you got corruption going on, people get angry and get mad at God like God did it.
Right.
And they find out that the preacher that they've been worshiping is corrupt. And they leave God totally.
Yeah, and here you have, because if you got one world religion, and if it is a Christianity, and there is a false prophet that's leading it, that false prophet is going to be like many other, and see, this is where you get the whole idea of a pope, because that's pope-like. One individual leading the whole world, and whom they should, what does the Catholic Church call the pope? The representative of Jesus Christ on the earth. Why does the Pope carry so much authority? Because they are the representative of Jesus Christ on the earth. In the Catholic Church, the Bible is not the authority. The Pope is authority. What the Pope speaks is authority. Period. If the Pope, literally, if the Pope said the Gospel of Matthew is false, according to the way Catholic doctrine is written, then they would have to go with it's false. Then if they get a new pope, the new pope can come back in and say, it's good, it's not false. And they would go with that. And I'll give you a prime example. Can priests get married? If you check back in history, there was a time when they could. Do you know who determined whether or not they could get married or not? The Pope. There were popes that came along and said, no, you can get married. And then the next one came along and said, no, you can't. Interesting, huh? That's how much power the Pope is. Yes. Power. By the way, if you have that much power and you got cardinals, and any of the cardinals could become the next Pope, we see this in corporations, we see this in politics, we see this in everything. What usually ends up happening? If you're gonna pick the Pope, if the cardinals are gonna pick the Pope, right? And so, what are each one of these cardinals doing? It's political, and usually that leads to corruption. Add some money into it. The Vatican? Oh man, don't even go there. Donald Trump wish he could see that much money. Wish he could. So, it's 8:20. Real quick, okay? Y'all hang. No practicing that. Okay. Hang for 5 minutes. I think we'll be through here. All right. These will. Then he said, and the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, they will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. So they're going to eat up the false religion, but he's still going to be claiming he's God. He's going to expose it for what it finally is. He's going to show everybody this is what people have been following forever. This is the false religion. Verse 17, for God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose. Oh, put the brakes on. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose.
Is y'all's his capitalized?
Yes, his purpose.
My Bible doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's God's purpose.
Yeah. Well, yeah. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill God's purpose. What is his purpose? To be of one mind and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. What you can say is, what we say, and I don't think we fully understand, because you can always get that question. Well, why did he create Satan? He didn't create Satan. He created Lucifer. Well, didn't he know Satan was coming? Yep. And then the Bible says that he was going to use him for his own purposes. The devil? What's the devil's number one influence? It actually started at Babel. It started in the garden, man's fall, and Babel gets you away from worshiping God altogether. So that we know from a religious perspective, man is guilty as all get out, and God here is going to use Satan via the Antichrist to finally show man, let me show you how messed up and corrupt you are. You're worshiping a false religion that was built upon money and power and control. When we get to the next chapter, we're going to see the money, the power, and the control. And so he says in verse 18, and the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. And the woman you saw is that great city, Babylon. That's a system. Babylon is a system. It's not a city. It's a system. It's a system that we have today. And when we get into the next chapter on next week, God willing, we'll see that it is a system that we have politically in the world and financially in the world. And everybody in here knows politics is run by money. And politics is about control and power. Right? Y'all know that. Because I got a question for you. Is there going to be any political anything in the millennial kingdom?
No.
You'll have a kingdom. You'll have a kingdom. I heard this when I was in seminary, and at first, when I first heard it, I thought, really? And then when it was explained, it made so much sense. My professor said, how many of y'all love being in a democracy? Of course, you're American. What do you say? Absolutely. Democracy is the greatest thing in the world. You know what he said? Worst thing in the world is a democracy. When you have the masses are stupid. So we're like sitting there going, man, you don't like America. And he says, give me a holy, righteous king with absolute power. Holy, righteous, perfect, omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful king with absolute power, and I don't get a vote. I'd rather have that. And when I thought about it, I'm like,
Yep.
yep, you're absolutely right. That's what you get in the millennial kingdom. So we'll stop there. We'll do further chapter 18 next time.